Alright, man, peace. So, brothers, I have to be very frank with you. Nothing that's going on with the Los Angeles Lakers surprises me in the least. I predicted that they're going to win somewhere in the high 40s in regards to wins in the Western Conference, led by Mr. LeBron James. And in addition to that, nothing that is transpiring in regards to their coach is surprising to me at all either. If it were not for the owner, Miss Jeannie Buss, I believe that Luke Walton would have been fired a very long time ago. And the only reason why he's been given such a long rope by which to hang himself is because Magic Johnson wants to make sure that there is no stone left unturned and that he does not try to cross Jeannie Buss too overtly. But make no mistake about it, Magic Johnson is the person who is executing the battle axe here for the Los Angeles Lakers. He's the one who's pretty much running the franchise. This notion that Jeannie Buss is truly in charge, that's just the modern day super liberal sports media trying to exalt the woman in a position of authority. Everything is being controlled by Magic Johnson. And once again, it would not surprise me if somewhere down the line, Magic Johnson was allowed to buy the franchise. I stated that many, many moons ago. But just getting back to the point, I remember way back, well, I can't say I remember, but when we go back into the lore of the NBA, at the start of the 1986-87 season, the Chicago Bulls decided that they were going to hire Mr. Doug Collins to be the new head coach. And after that season, their general manager, Jerry Krause, decided that he was going to bring into the fold of Doug Collins' assistant coaching staff a young and vibrant up-and-coming coach from the CBA by the name of Phil Jackson. And Doug Collins never trusted Phil Jackson because he understood that Phil Jackson was acting as a plug to Jerry Krause and Jerry Reinsdorf. In other words, Phil Jackson was running back to Jerry Krause, telling him everything that Doug Collins was doing. So if Jerry Krause did not want Doug Collins to do something, if Doug decided to do it anyway, or show any sign of rebelliousness, Phil Jackson would run back to Jerry Krause. That's why he was able to eventually get the job as the head coach of the Chicago Bulls. Because in Phil Jackson's first season as an assistant coach for the Bulls, they went 50-32. Doug Collins was at the helm. The next season, they only won 47 games, but they had such a deep run in the playoffs, getting to the Eastern Conference Finals and losing in 6 games to the Detroit Pistons, that they understood that should they decide to fire Doug Collins, it would make a splash. But they did it anyway, because they always wanted Phil Jackson to be the head coach, because they figured he was a company man. And that was the point of forcing Doug Collins to take Phil Jackson on as an assistant coach in the first place, because they wanted a company man. And this leads me to this situation here with the Lakers, because Magic Johnson is on record, at least according to Stephen A. Smith, as wanting Luke Walton to upgrade his assistant coaching staff. That means what? That means Magic Johnson has an idea of who he wants to be on that assistant coaching staff, and he's probably going to force Luke Walton to accept a certain assistant coach, which is going to act as the potential death knell for Luke Walton somewhere down the line, because whoever that assistant coach is that Magic Johnson wants Luke Walton to take on is most likely going to be his replacement. So they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
It doesn't bother me at all because I don't pay attention to it. I don't listen to it. It actually never even gets to me, really. So
yeah, okay, LeBron James. Everything that goes on with the Lakers, none of it gets to you at all. You don't hear anything about it. Believe me, the reason why Magic Johnson had that meeting with Luke Walton is because LeBron James sent him a text message saying, look, you need to speak to Luke. He's an all right dude, but his assistant coaching staff is whack juice, and they don't really know what they're doing. I promise you, that is what happened. Because Magic Johnson is not going to move unless he has the co-signature of LeBron James.
So it's not a big deal for us.
Stephen A. never even gets to him at all. He doesn't even talk about it. He doesn't even think about it.
He just works there.
He's not involved in the conversation.
He just works there.
Exactly.
He shows up, he dribbles a basketball, punches the clock, goes home. That's above his pay grade.
Yeah, that's the game that LeBron James has been trying to play since he went back to Cleveland in 2014. He couldn't pull any of that bullshit in Miami with Pat Riley because Pat Riley was a real alpha male and kept LeBron James in his proper place and in his proper perspective. But ever since he's gone back to Cleveland, LeBron James has tried to play this passive-aggressive role where he knows nothing, he does nothing, all he does is play basketball. But all these coaches keep getting hired and fired all around him. Ain't that some shit?
Oh, come on, LeBron. We know better than that. Stephen A., let me ask you this. Should Luke Walton be in trouble?
I don't think so. Not for this year. Well,
what does that really mean, Stephen A. Smith? I'm on record as stating that I don't believe that Luke Walton is going to last the year. Now, he might. I may be willing to change that prediction depending on how much he's able to turn the LA Lakers franchise around. That was a great acquisition, adding Tyson Chandler. He provides some physicality in the middle that they were lacking with JaVale McGee as their center. And, of course, they had no physicality and no defense in the middle with LeBron James because LeBron James does not guard anybody. His defense is even worse than Carmelo Anthony's. The difference is that from an offensive perspective, there's still no player in the NBA that brings the complete package and everything that LeBron James brings to an offense as a one-man offense, basically. That's the main difference because LeBron James' defense is horrific. But just getting back to the point, should Luke Walton be on the hot seat? I'm on record as stating that his style of coaching, the system that he wants to implement, does not fit the staff that they have in regards to their players. It just does not fit their roster. He's trying to bring in the Golden State style of offense. The pace is way too fast. LeBron James, I'm sure, is frustrated with the pace, but he can't say that because he keeps trying to propagate this notion that he's in the best condition of any player in the NBA. We know that that's not true. He knows how to make sure that he conserves his energy over the course of a season. So this is the conundrum that Luke Walton is in right now. He's trying to implement a system that he knows works in Golden State, but it's not going to work in LA. Magic Johnson knows that it's not going to work. So we're really going to get a chance to see how good of a coach Luke Walton is, because what a great coach can do is he can adjust.
And I recognize that Magic Johnson has stated for the record he is not. I want to emphasize this. I do not believe them.
Neither do I.
I do not believe them. Do I believe he should be in trouble for this year? No. I think the team that they presently have assembled, you got some work to do. You have to improve defensively. There's no question about it. And from what I was being told, when Magic met with Luke Walton last week, in a report that Adrian Wojnarowski and Dave McMenamin highlighted, I had mentioned something about it prior to that. But here's the reality. Magic Johnson had a conversation with Luke Walton. And here's why. 2 reasons. Magic Johnson is not satisfied with how they look defensively, and he thinks that Luke Walton needs a better coaching staff. Now, he's not going to say that publicly, but I'm telling you what I know.
Once again, what that really means is, Luke Walton, I have somebody in mind that I want to put on your coaching staff. And by the way, he's going to act as a plug. He's going to be reporting to me in regards to what you're doing, because I have my own recommendations, quote unquote, for the style of play that I think the Lakers should be exhibiting on the basketball court. And I'm going to give you those quote unquote recommendations. And if you don't implement them, then it's going to be a problem. So to just take it up to another level, I'm going to bring in a like-minded coach who's going to be on your coaching staff, and he's going to act as an intermediary. That's what that translates to.
Brian Shaw, and I haven't spoken to Magic Johnson, just for those out there wondering, I have not spoken to Magic Johnson about this. But let me tell you something right now. Brian Shaw is the one person on that squad that has coaching experience. Outside of that, listen, Mark Madsen, nicest guy in the world. We still love him from his days dancing on stage when the Lakers won championships with his non-dancing self. But he's a fun-loving guy, real pleasant guy to be around. And he's working his way up the coaching ranks in this business, and we wish him luck. But Brian Keefe, Mark Madsen, was it Jesse Momize or whatever?
I tell you, boy, it really pays off to be a Caucasian bench player in the NBA, because you won't get much playing time, but 15 years down the line, you're going to get a whole bunch of coaching opportunities. It's unbelievable.
Simon and these guys, Magic Johnson wants Luke Walton to have a more experienced coaching staff.
Stephen A. Smith, Magic Johnson wants Luke Walton to have a coach on his assistant coaching staff who's going to understand how to utilize a style that's going to fit the roster that they have. So that's what Magic Johnson is in the process of doing right now. He's trying to figure out who he wants to bring onto the Luke Walton coaching staff. That's assuming that he has not figured that out already. But once that's done, once he's able to ascertain who he wants to add onto Luke Walton's coaching staff, that is going to be accomplished expeditiously, and Luke Walton won't have a damn thing to say about it.
And also, by the way, you don't get to try and play like the Golden State Warriors when you don't have their roster.
Thank you, sir. I've been saying that for I don't know how many months now.
So these are the elements of concern for somebody like Magic Johnson. Defensively, you're just a non-existent. Offensively, you're trying to be something that you're not because you don't have the personnel. And then on top of it all, to bring these guys along, what Luke Walton did was hire guys he knows, guys he's incredibly comfortable with, and I'm in no way impugning or questioning their basketball acumen. But I am telling you that Magic Johnson and Rob Pelinka have concerns about the coaching staff.
The staff below Luke Walton.
The staff below Luke Walton. And so when you have that going on, this is...
Well, Stephen A. Smith, I mean, come on, let's be for real. When you make statements like that, when you're that concerned about the assistant coaching staff, what you're really saying is that you're concerned about the head coach, but you don't quite feel comfortable saying that because you don't want to feed into already preconceived narratives about how the season was going to go in regards to Luke Walton. It's the same thing with Jerry Krause and with Jerry Reinsdorf. They brought in Doug Collins. They were not quite crazy about the performance of the Chicago Bulls in the 86-87 season. It was a little bit too much Jordan-centric, so they brought in Phil Jackson as an assistant coach for the 87-88 season, and he acted as a plant. That is what Magic Johnson wants for the Luke Walton assistant coaching staff.
This is something that Golden State complained about with Mark Jackson. Now, I happen to know a couple of the guys that Mark Jackson had under his stable under him. And I like those guys, and I know they knew basketball. The flip side to it is that
in other words, Mark Jackson, we're not feeling you, and you're on your way out because we don't like a lot of your religious allegiances. We don't like a lot of the sentiment that you're putting forth in the locker room. You're not as super liberal and as woke as we want you to be. So we're going to start looking for little things to nitpick you about. Before you got here, we were a moribund franchise. You were able to lead us out of the darkness into respectability. But you know what? You're not quite woke enough. Once again, whenever the front office or ownership starts to nitpick a coach about his assistant coaches, that's a death knell for that head coach. Bottom line.
Well, Steve Kerr was willing to do that. And what have they done? Going to 4 straight NBA finals. And so you're going to have presidents of basketball operations and team owners who believe that they know just as much, if not more, particularly than a young coach like Luke Walton. The situation is clear, Max. Better defense, a better offensive scheme, orchestrated by a coaching staff that they can trust. Because, again, LeBron is not going to say anything. Let's be clear about that, Max.
He's not going to say anything publicly, Stephen A. Smith. Let's specify that. LeBron is always going to say something because he views basketball a certain way. Magic Johnson views basketball a very similar way to LeBron James. They're not synchronous, but they're very similar. And I guarantee you that they have a very high level, a very potent connectivity with one another in regards to how they see the game of basketball. And I promise you that they are very copacetic when it comes to the topic of Luke Walton.
That Max. LeBron James is not going to say anything. He's going to go out there publicly. He's going to state privately that he is in full support of Luke Walton. And I like Luke Walton, and I hope that he keeps his job. But LeBron is going to say that because LeBron knows that if another coach gets fired, everybody's going to look at him. And he don't want any parts of that. So that's what you have.
OG Magic Johnson. Remember OG Bobby Johnson, that song a couple years ago? OG. Word on the street, you were a suspect for Luke Walton, is what Magic Johnson is saying. The truth of the matter is Luke Walton's a good coach. And when he had a good team, he never lost when he was the interim coach.
24.
Right, but let's be very clear about Luke Walton's little tenure as the interim head coach of the Golden State Warriors during their 73-9 run. They were pretty much running on automatic. That's what that team was doing. So I can't quite give Luke Walton credit for that.
24-0.
That's a
24-0.
ridiculous record.
24-0 to start, 39-4 overall.
39-4.
Right.
39-4.
Can I interrupt you with a question? I like Luke Walton, and I do think he's a good coach. And I hope that he keeps his job. I'm very fond of Luke Walton. I'll ask you this question, though. How many people went 39-4?
I'm going to get there. I'm going to get there. Luke Walton's a good coach. I think Luke Walton's a good coach. Okay. These are the Lakers, and good isn't good enough. Mm-hmm. Much like I say, again, with my Yankees, Brian Cashman's one of the best GMs in baseball. That's not good enough. The Yankees you must be the best GM in baseball.
Red Sox are winning.
You must be. You're right. As a Yankees fan, I could say, you don't have to win the World Series every year, but I must insist you win it more than anyone else, especially your rivals.
Well, Max Kellerman, I have news for you. This is the modern day sports world. So you still can't hold on to what the New York Yankees were doing back in the 30s and 40s and 50s. Right now, pretty much every team in baseball is on a level playing field, and that takes me to the Lakers. The Lakers cannot just hold on to what they were able to get away with, and yes, I say get away with back in the 1980s, because it's very obvious that it was not just through industrious enterprise that they were able to have 4 number 1 draft picks on one team, and I mean 4 productive number 1 draft picks playing on one team at the same time, like they had in 1986 and 87 and 88. There was also some skullduggery going on there. And it's far more difficult to utilize skullduggery in this time period that we're living in, where everything is under surveillance. Everybody's able to chime in with their perspective or their take on things. Everything is under a far higher deal of scrutiny. So we're really going to get a very accurate appraisal of how good a front office person and how much of a basketball genius off the court Magic Johnson really is.
The Lakers don't have to win the championship every year. They don't have to, I know, I get it. They don't need the greatest coach of all time, but their coach has to be top shelf. He can't just be good. And so the reason I don't think it's unfair to take a good, long, hard look at Luke Walton is that this is not the Memphis Grizzlies. You know, due respect to them, they had a good run for a number of years in a not very big market. This is the Los Angeles Lakers. This is the gold standard for basketball around the world.
Well, not anymore, Max Kellerman. Once again, you're living back in the 1980s and the early 2000s. Right now, the gold standard for basketball is the Golden State Warriors. And you're going to have to get over that. Now, what the Los Angeles Lakers are going to have to accept, and their fan base is going to have to accept, is that they're actually going to have to use their ingenuity and their creativity to figure out how they can usurp the Golden State Warriors, because you're not going to out-warrior the Warriors. You're not going to outrun and gun them. That's what I mean by that. So they're going to have to figure out some other way to make how they play on a level playing field with the Golden State Warriors. Can they do that over the next 3 years? That's really the test for Mr. Magic Johnson and Rob Pelinka and LeBron James as well.
Forget about the Celtics in terms of the history for a second. The vast majority of their success in Boston took place pre-modern era. You know, what do you want to call it? The merger, ABA, NBA, the three-point line, whatever you want to call.
Well, let me say this about the Boston Celtics. They had very good success in the 70s until the late 70s. And then they drafted the great Larry Bird in 1979. They drafted the great Kevin McHale in 1980. They were able to bring in Dennis Johnson and Robert Parrish. And they had one of the best teams in the NBA in the early 80s, and probably the best team in the NBA for a portion of the early part of the mid-80s. What really hurt their franchise was what happened with Len Bias and later on Reggie Lewis. Because they drafted Len Bias in 1986. They drafted Reggie Lewis, I believe, in 1987 or 88. And those were supposed to be the players that would have bridged the gap between Larry Bird and Paul Pierce. Because those players would have made the Celtics competitive throughout the 90s. And when you look at the 1990s, the Celtics had very good teams in the early part of the 90s until, of course, Bird and McHale retired. And then Reggie Lewis had that issue, that incident where he died due to a heart attack. But had they been able to have Len Bias and Reggie Lewis, they would have had the team that they would have needed throughout the 90s to keep their string of success going.
Call, modern basketball, Celtics won 4 in that span. The Bulls have won 6. The Spurs have won 5. The Lakers have won 10. 10! It's not close.
Well, the Lakers have been fortunate from 1979 all the way through the early 2000s to have 4 of the top 15 players in the history of the NBA. It's very difficult to do.
In the way we think about basketball, the Lakers are it, and they're in this enormous market, LA. And you think about what is the real American export? Our number one export is our culture. What's the portal? LA.
Thank you, sir, for acknowledging that. Once again, Max Kellerman is correctly deducing that Hollywood is the portal through which the rest of the world is placed under a spell.
It's an incredibly, and the Lakers more than anything make LA a city. If it wasn't for the Lakers, it's just a disconnected suburbs. Yeah. Everyone comes together to watch this team. So, the Los Angeles Lakers coach can't just be good. They have to be great. And to say that Luke Walton, and this is the point I want to get to. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
I want to finish. Stephen A., you hit you touched on this. It's not if you have success playing a certain way in Golden State, right? Under Steve Kerr. It's basketball's not prescriptive. In other words, here, let me write you the prescription. This is one size fits all. The reason Steve Kerr had the success he did in Golden State is he took from Phil Jackson, he took from Greg Popovich. He opened up the toolbox and said, what works, what fits this crew?
Steve Kerr was also able to utilize the finer aspects of what Mike D'Antoni brought into the NBA from an offensive perspective. And what Steve Kerr did to ratchet up the potency or the proficiency of the Mike D'Antoni system was he combined it with defensive principles. And that's what makes the Golden State Warriors so dominant, is that they have the best components of the great offensive ideologies of the prominent coaches that Steve Kerr has been around or been subjected to, and also the finer aspects of the defensive components.
Group of guys, and then form the team in a game plan. That Luke Walton can't simply take that and map that onto these Lakers. It won't work. That is true.
Okay, two things Stephen A. said that was interesting that I wanted you to react to. So one, basically, he said that they're upset with the staff below Luke Walton. That Luke's not in trouble. But Stephen A. said this season he feels like he's fine, but after that maybe he could be. You agree with that statement? Do you think Luke Walton's okay this year?
I think that Luke Walton is okay as long as the team is winning. If they can get to the All-Star break and they're around 8 or 9 games over 500, he'll be okay. If they get anywhere near the All-Star break and they're only around 500, or God forbid for Luke Walton's sake, under 500, he will be let go.
I don't think they're going to fire Luke Walton this year. I do think anytime that group, the new group, didn't hire that coach, and this is my point, must be great to keep his job. And the reason Stephen A.
I agree. And certain times, even if they did hire that coach, he better show that he's willing to listen to what the front office has to say, i.e. Doug Collins with the Chicago Bulls.
But I don't think that's unfair in this case. It's the Lakers. The coach better be great. That's a fair standard for the Lakers.
Stephen A., you also made another interesting point. I felt like what you said about LeBron. Now people look at LeBron if another coach did get fired under his watch. You agree with that?
I don't think LeBron... He might care in the moment about the way that looks, Stephen A. I think LeBron wants to win.
I agree. I don't think that LeBron really gives a shit how he's going to look. He's cognizant of the fact that they are going to blame him, but I think that he also understands that they should look at him. Because if he has as much clout as he alleges to have, or as much clout as he seems to yearn for, of course there's going to be a correlation between a coach getting fired and him possibly being involved in it, because why wouldn't he be involved in it? He has the most prestige of any player in the world today. Magic Johnson basically bows down at his feet. So, of course, one would not be unreasonable to assume or to ascertain that in order for Luke Walton to be fired, LeBron James would have had to have given the okay.
Beyond that moment of trying to control the spin, I think LeBron wants to win, and in the end, that's what people will remember.
LeBron understands he's a Luciferian, that in order to achieve great things in that world, it demands a sacrifice. Sometimes literal, sometimes figurative. Luke Walton would be a figurative sacrifice.
Magic Johnson cannot fire Luke Walton this season, because if he fires Luke Walton, LeBron James will get the blame. LeBron James, Mike Brown, David Blatt, etc.
But Stephen A. Smith, what does that really mean? If Magic Johnson fires Luke Walton at the end of the season, LeBron James is still going to get the blame. There's no scenario where Luke Walton gets fired and LeBron does not get the blame. He's billed himself as the greatest player in the history of the NBA. And you guys in the super liberal sports media never really blame him for anything. As a matter of fact, you castigate those who want to hold him accountable for anything. So once again, there's no scenario, there's no situation where there's not going to be some type of connectivity that is put forth by people who are observing the NBA in regards to why Luke Walton has been canned, and LeBron James being an advocate for him being canned. So I think that it will be uncomfortable for LeBron at first, initially, but after a while he just won't give a shit. Because LeBron's going to do what he needs to do to get the prestige that he thinks that he deserves.
You know, when he first arrived in Miami, there was supposedly some friction. But you know what? Pat Riley, that's Eric Spoelstra, that's his guy. Okay, so Pat Riley was not going to capitulate to that. But there was rumors swirling about that. Fair or unfair, accurate or not accurate. those storylines have been associated with LeBron James periodically throughout his career. Magic Johnson is incredibly fond of LeBron James. I'm not talking about LeBron James, the player, the best in the world. I'm talking about LeBron James and his off-the-court exploits and what he's done. LeBron James, he has an incredible fan in Magic Johnson. And Magic Johnson wouldn't want to put him in that situation. That's one of the reasons why Magic doesn't go to every game, because he's Irvin Magic Johnson. And he knows that when he's in the building, it's going to be somewhat of a distraction. It's LeBron's show, let it be his show. So if he's sensitive enough where he doesn't go to Portland for the opening night game because he recognizes that that would take some shine away. If he's up in his suite and not in the tunnel all the time because he's guarding against him receiving too much attention, he is going to be protective of LeBron James. And there is no way that LeBron is going to be protected if Magic Johnson gets rid of Luke Walton. If Luke Walton gets fired this season, I don't think he should. And I don't think he will. But if he ends up getting dismissed as coach of the Los Angeles Lakers, that means it got so bad that Magic Johnson had to shove aside protecting LeBron James and do what's in the best interest of the franchise. And my last point is this.
Stephen A. Smith, you said a lot right there, and most of it is just based on your own supposition. At the end of the day, Magic Johnson's job is to do what's best for the franchise first, not what's best for LeBron James's image. I don't think that Magic Johnson is anywhere near as concerned for LeBron James's image as you're making him out to be. Magic Johnson understands that LeBron James is a big boy, and Magic Johnson has been through this himself over the course of his career, where coaches were fired and he got the blame. You have to move forward. Whether the coach is fired or he maintains, your job as the superstar is to lead your team. And when the Lakers go to the playoffs this year and they go out in the second or third round, LeBron James is going to get the blame whether Luke Walton is the coach or not. And when I say he's going to get the blame, he's going to get the blame by astute observers. Certain people in the super liberal sports media, of course, are going to make up very intricately woven excuses for LeBron James. But LeBron James is still going to get his appropriate share of the blame by those of us who pay appropriate attention to what's going on.
Understand this, just for everybody's edification. This whole Genie Bus hired Luke Walton thing, condition upon which Magic Johnson took the job is that he would have complete autonomy over basketball operations. Whatever decision he wants to make, basketball, not business-wise, basketball-wise, whatever decision he wants to make, Genie Bus will capitulate to Magic Johnson.
Of course, because he has her keys. He knows how to manipulate that female. Just as an aside, I've mentioned this before, Jeannie Buss is a monarch child. She's beta programmed. She's a sex kitten.
He is running the Lakers basketball operations.
Your point about Cleveland and how he got rid of all the coaches wherever he went, but he couldn't get rid of Spoelstra, even though if there was a little friction, points out to me a very important thing about LeBron James. He did best when he went to a strong organization with...
Ding! Wow, Max Kellerman, you finally came to understand what I've been saying for months now, if not years. That LeBron James has had his most success in franchises where they told him to shut the hell up and do his job, as opposed to letting him run roughshod throughout the organization. There's a reason why he only has one title outside of his 4 years with the Miami Heat.
With very strong leadership at the top, obviously, with Pat Riley. The difference here is that Pat Riley handpicked Eric Spoelstra. Magic Johnson has not handpicked Luke Walton. If Magic Johnson had handpicked Luke Walton, then it would be on Magic to tell LeBron whether or not you like it, this is the guy. But that's not the case here.
Let me have the last word on this. Let me say this. LeBron James, I'm not going to say he got rid of anybody, because he'll deny that. They'll deny, his team will deny that, all of that other stuff. And I just don't feel like dealing with that headache right now. But I will tell you this. LeBron James is a basketball savant. He knows basketball. And
of course he does. That's the only thing that he knows. LeBron literally knows nothing else other than basketball. But he is a savant at basketball. So that's a great thing for you to have that level of depth of knowledge on any one subject. Most people in life do not have a depth of knowledge or wealth of knowledge on one subject at all. They just pretty much diddy-bop their way through life.
And Magic knows basketball. You cannot have anybody around them that doesn't know the game. They believe Luke Walton knows the game. But Magic is concerned about that coaching staff. And if Luke, rather than talk about Magic and what he should do, or LeBron and what he should do, let's hope Luke Walton is listening, and Luke Walton takes and heeds those suggestions strongly and make sure he buff.
Stephen A. Smith, once again, that's not a suggestion. That's Magic Johnson letting him know that if Luke Walton is allowed to stay on with the team, that he's going to have to accept certain assistant coaches that will be handpicked by Magic Johnson and Rob Pelinka. When they tell Luke Walton that he has to upgrade his assistant coaching staff, they're not telling him that you have the right to go pick who you want. They're telling him that we're going to pick certain guys that are going to be on your coaching staff who will eventually potentially replace you. That's all it's about.
Buffers his coaching staff without casting any shade on the assistant coaches he has. Clearly, if Magic Johnson is telling you he wants a more experienced staff, that's a hint that you might need to take heed to.
Yeah.
And do it if you like coaching the Los Angeles Lakers. Period.
I'm picking up what you're putting down, Stephen A. All right, Lakers get the Timberwolves on Wednesday. When we come back...
But anyway, that's basically it on that. We'll see how things turn out for Mr. Luke Walton. So peace.